I'm really enjoying about doing this Top 50 series is rethinking through all the games I've played and remembering all the reasons I love them. And that's really, really fun for me. So let's take a look at my number 30 through 21 games of all time, and I'll travel down my own personal memory lane in my head while we do it. Kicking us off at number 30 is Karuba. This is a tile laying game in which players are racing to get their adventurers to a matching temple by laying path tiles on a board. But the way this one works is each player has their own board and their own set of tiles. And then one player kind of serves as a bingo caller by randomizing their tiles and then calling them out one by one. Then each player has to play the same tile in the same turn. So let's say 29 is called. Well, then each player has to place 29 on their board, but they can put it anywhere that they want to. And then number 3, and then each player has to play number 3. So every player has the same setup, the same tiles, and they're played in the same order. The only difference is the choice the player makes with those tiles. Not only can players place them anywhere on their board that they want, but they can also discard them for movement points, which is how the adventurers actually get to the temple once the path is there. And on top of that, there are gems that you can collect for points along the way, but that may make you stop your movement short, so there's always a decision there as well. I love Karuba because within a few turns, every player's board looks completely different, even though they've had the same setup and start, which I think is so cool. Another great thing about Karuba is that it scales pretty much infinitely, just depending on how many sets of the game that you have. We proved this with Mega Karuba during Gen Cant in 2016, and we had dozens and dozens of players online playing the same game of Karuba together, and it was a blast. Karuba is one of those games that you can play with kids or adults and everybody will have a great time. It is a wonderful family game, a great filler. It's really puzzly, and it is at my number 30. Castles of Mad King Ludwig is at my number 29 spot. When most people look at the game, the first thing they see are the room tiles that come in a bunch of different shapes and colors. And without a doubt, a lot of the game is in smartly placing these tiles so that they can combo off of each other or get room completion bonuses and things like that. But anybody who's played castles knows that the real heart of the game is in the tile market and the master builder role. Master builder passes from player to player each round, and this is the person that gets to set the price for each of those tiles. So you're looking around the table and trying to figure out what tiles your opponents want, what tiles you want, and figuring out the exact right price, because any money that your opponents pay for a tile comes to your bank. And that is such a compelling element of the game. Now, it can lead to AP in some players, and that's a bummer, but it's my favorite part of the game because it keeps you engaged the whole time. You always want to know what your opponents are up to so that you can plan ahead, and that's really cool. Personally, I love Castles of Mad King Ludwig so much, I invested in getting a Polish version of the game because it has upgraded art on the tiles that makes the table presentation even more stunning. So Castles of Mad King Ludwig, it is my number 29 game. And coming in at number 28 is Roll for the Galaxy. This game strikes the perfect balance between luck and mitigation in a dice game. I really like that they use the Race for the Galaxy mechanism where if one player triggers an action, then all players can take that action. And then I really like all the mitigation elements they give you for behind your player shield. I like that you can use an off-face die to trigger an action so that you're never truly stuck by what you roll. But then there's a lot of strategy in the game as well, especially in deciding which dice you're going to add to your pool to help mitigate things and add to your strategy. And then, of course, there's the tiles that you're adding to your tableau, which are giving you benefits or guiding your strategy as far as dice and shipping and things like that. Roll for the Galaxy is just a really satisfying gaming experience. There is luck, there's mitigation, there's tactics, there's strategy, and there are a ton of custom pressed dice that make a really great rattling noise in these big plastic cups that you get as you play. And that is why Roll for the Galaxy is my number 28 game. And coming in at my number 27 is automobiles. This is a pool building and racing game in which cubes represent the spaces on the racetrack that you can move on, and also engine upgrades that you can enhance your vehicle with. The faster you go around the track, the more wear your car will take, which translates into these wear cubes being added to your pool, which just bogs you down. But that's when those engine enhancements will kick in, because they can let you do things like get rid of those wear cubes, or push you around the track faster, or help you exchange cubes from your active pool to your bag and vice versa. And I really like the way that those engine abilities help mitigate the look of the draw from your pool. Automobiles is kind of an unusual mix of mechanisms, pool building and racing, and I'm not sure it should work, but it just clicks. I love this game. I feel like I'm racing. I make car noises as I'm pushing my car around the track, and that's probably a hallmark of a really good racing game, right? So Automobiles is my number 27 game. I'm not usually much of a stock market game fan, and I'm not much of an expansion fan either, but Stockpile breaks both of those rules for me. In Stockpile, you're basically manipulating the price of 6 different corporations, which doesn't sound like a lot of fun to me, to be honest, but I love this game. First, you get dealt some insider information, so you'll know one corporation and what direction it's going to move in. And then you have to get some shares, right? Or hope you get some shares. All players get dealt 2 cards, and then you play them to an auction board, one face up and one face down. And then you bid on these auction spots. So you're really hoping that you pay just the right price to get a whole bunch of shares and not a lot of fees. When all the dust settles, you basically hope that you follow the rules of the stock market. Buy low and sell high. There's a mechanism that allows stocks to split, and everything is really simple and easy to play. Now, as to that expansion, Continuing Corruptions actually includes like 4 different modules, but at least one of them is a must-have. There are dice that now will switch up the market manipulation cards that are available in each round. This adds just the right touch of randomization that adds a little extra excitement between rounds. It doesn't randomize the game too much because you'll still know what cards are in for the round, but it just adds that little extra surprise that is unpredictable, like the stock market is. Stockpile's play is simple and streamlined, which makes it super duper fun, and it makes it my number 26 game. I love a card game that packs a big gameplay punch, and Arboretum definitely fits that bill, and it's why it's my number 25 game. Arboretum's a really simple game, right? All you're trying to do is build up a tableau of beautifully illustrated tree cards in front of you in the hopes of creating paths that ascend in order between 1 and 8. Those paths don't have to be sequential, and they can zigzag throughout your tableau. But all the little rules twists in this game make it a stellar standout. First of all, those paths, they don't have to be made up of the same tree type. As long as the path starts and ends with the same tree type, you can score it potentially. And then there's the gameplay itself. The rules are so simple. Draw 2 cards, play a card to your tableau, and discard a card. But this hand management element of the game is so full of tension, it's unbelievable. That discard decision is going to be the toughest choice you make each round. And I have seen players get kind of frozen by it in analysis paralysis as they're looking around at all the different tableaus and trying to figure out which card they can get rid of in their hand that'll be least advantageous to other players, or maybe make it back to them by the end of the next round. And then lastly, you have to earn the right to score a given tree type. And I have seen a lot of players build up what should be high scoring tableaus, but they held back the wrong cards in their hand and they don't have enough bidding power to win the right to score that tree type. Those moments are both wonderful and awful as you're trying to figure out who gets to score what type of tree. For all of these reasons, Arboretum is actually a really thinky game for such a simple rule set, especially. And for that tree-based brain-burning power, Arboretum earns my number 25 spot. Another card game that packs a punch, but significantly less brain burn, is No Thanks, my number 24 game. No Thanks is one of those games that I think everybody should own. For those of you unfamiliar with it, you get a deck of cards numbered 3 through 35 and a bunch of chips. Each player gets their own handful of chips, and then you start flipping over cards one by one. Now, cards are points, and points are bad because this is a golf scoring game. And so as these cards flip up, if you don't want to take the card, you have to put a chip on it and say, no thanks, and it passes on to the next player. But eventually these cards will collect enough chips on it that it kind of changes the value proposition of the card and somebody will take it. And they get all those chips to play in the future, and then they've built up their tableau. There are a couple of things in this game that make it special. First of all, the value of the cards will change as the game continues, because if you have a run of cards in your tableau, you only score the lowest value card in that run. So let's say you have the 3 through 10 in order in your tableau. You'll only score 3 points for all of those cards. And then the number 11 comes out. Well, to everybody else at the table, it's worth 11 points. But to you, it's worth 0 points and highly desirable. So you're hoping that everybody else will pass on that card, dropping a chip on it, so that when it comes to you, you can snap it up. And how long you want to push your luck on that one is up to you as well. And really, No Thanks comes down to two things. You're playing the odds of the cards, which are, randomized and shuffled up, and there's a few removed each game. And you're playing the players, and that's what makes it super engaging. No Thanks is simple, accessible, and inexpensive. It is an evergreen filler in my collection, and it is my number 24 pick. Coming in at number 23 is Jiraku. This is a wonderful blend of trick-taking and area control. Now, it might not be apparent from my list so far, but I am a huge fan of trick-taking games. And if you're not familiar with that term, those are things like hearts and spades and even bridge. Well, I especially like it when game designers add a little twist to the trick-taking or add another game mechanism to enhance the overall game. And Jiraku does both. First, there's that trick-taking play. Well, like most trick-taking games, you have to follow suit when you play a card if you can. But the highest value card in the trick, regardless of suit, will win it. And that's pretty mind-blowing for somebody who's used to more traditional roles. Then there's also the element of you may not want to win the trick or not care about it and play something random from your hand simply because you want to be able to use that card's ability. Because when you play a card, you have to move cubes on the board or add cubes to the board, which contributes to the area control, which is absolutely critical. Of course, if you win the trick, you get some bonus points, and if you're in the zone of the winner, you'll get some points as well, which adds a whole nother depth to the game. Then you get to move on to the area control. The board's made up of these vertical zones from left to right, but the real getcha in this game is those zones score differently as the game progresses. So in 3 rounds, the right-hand side of the game is worth a lot of points in the beginning. But by the end of the 3rd round, the left-hand side of the board is more valuable. So managing your areas, managing how you migrate these cubes from right to left, and figuring out which zones you're competitive in and which ones you're not, and planning ahead. Maybe you give up on early round scoring to go for mid-round scoring. Oh my gosh, there's so much to think about. It's incredibly strategic and thoughtful and fun and engaging. And just talking about it makes me want to play it right now. That's how good Jiraku is, and that is why it is my number 23 game. Patchwork is my number 22 game, and saying that's actually a little bit weird because I love this game so much. I'm surprised it's not higher on my list, but that's how good these games are getting. Patchwork has so many great elements to it. First of all, there are those kind of Tetris-y pieces which have instant appeal to me because I'm a child of the 80s and I played way too much Tetris as a kid. But I love the puzzle of fitting up all these pieces onto your quilt board and trying to maximize the space and be thoughtful and plan ahead, and how you're managing all of that is incredibly engaging. But so much of this game is actually in the economy of it, right? I love that the pieces are perfectly balanced. So if you have a piece that is larger and will cover up more of your quilt board, it's going to cost you more in time and or buttons. And managing that time track is so much of the game. I really, really like that you have a whole different element to the game in figuring out, hey, can I squeak out 2, 3, even 4 turns before my opponent gets to go simply by managing my time track? Patchwork is incredibly strategic because you get to see all of the pieces that are available to you and what order you're going to encounter them in. But I also love that they're always random, so each game plays out really, really differently. Patchwork is so well balanced. It's engaging, it's beautiful, it is fun, and it is a near perfect 2-player game, and it is my number 22 pick. And finally, my number 21 game is Istanbul. I really enjoy this worker placement, I guess, action selection, worker placement, and resource management game. I mean, ultimately, you are just moving around this board, collecting resources to convert into other resources to get rubies. And that all sounds like fairly standard fare. But the twist in this one that makes it so engaging, and my number 21, is that worker or team management element, because you have a merchant with a team of assistants who you have to drop off at the board spaces in order to take advantage of those actions. And managing that team, planning out routes to the spaces that you want to take advantage of, and ensuring you have enough team members and when you have to turn around to collect them back up so you can do anything else in the future, is an intriguing gameplay puzzle that I never get tired of. I also really like that the board layout is randomized every game, so you are solving a different puzzle every game, just following the same rules. And I think that is such a great way that Istanbul extends its replayability infinitely, at least for me. So Istanbul has intriguing worker placement and engaging puzzly gameplay. It plays super fast for how much game depth it has, and I never get bored with this one. So Istanbul is my number 21 game. All right, that was my 30 through 21. What did you think of my picks? I'm curious to know if you think I hit or missed the mark on any of them. And coming up is my top 20, the cream of the crop, which I'm so excited to talk about, so I will see you soon.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at DicetowerNetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.